So I want to welcome everyone again, and just thank you all for being here. We're about to start a big journey together. We don't know how something like this will turn out and what all the turns along the way are going to be. And it's a little crazy that we're undertaking such a project, but we're getting a lot of affirmation for the need and the role that it could help play, and a lot of support to continue. And so, you know, we might be the catalyst that really brings in the wins that are structural and make the difference. And in the meantime, of course, there'll be a whole system of organizations and efforts working within the very positive and aggressive administration to see what gets accomplished there. We'll be following all of that. We'll have, and so we'll just be looking at that and participating to some extent as people feel called, but mostly we will be working on our task of crafting a comprehensive climate bill and building a network. And as you all know, the message really here is building unity, both around policy and then networks. Go ahead, next slide. Compile a bill and build a network. We got that. Move on. Next slide, please. The meeting schedule, I wanted to start with this because I know I've sent out a series of different pieces on this. So there now will be 2 meetings a month. We've found some sanity in this whole construct, and that really makes the most sense. It's almost like reverting back to the style of meeting schedule that we had for when we created the digest. And the more I've come to think about it, this work is really about building on the digest, and we'll get into that. So 2 meetings a month. We'll do the policy one on the 2nd Saturday. This is not the 2nd Saturday meeting because this was already scheduled and we wanted to continue. And then we'll do the network and coalition, adopted district, all that stuff on the 4th Wednesdays. And all the links should be correct and prior links, and that should all work out. Then the sector teams, the policy sector teams, will be meeting more regularly at some regularly scheduled to be determined within those teams and within a little bit more of collaboration on how we're going to make all that come together. And those sector team meetings is real work is going to happen. And these broader meetings are to keep us all aware of the big picture and, you know, moving in the same direction, excited about where we're going. All right, next slide, please. We're already having great success, and we'll invite Attell in a few minutes to share more about this, reaching out to all sorts of partners, some from the symposium and beyond. So the 2 Indigenous advisors, I didn't list their organizations because they're long, are helping, and with that community. The NAACP has said yes to helping to participate, and the bill drafting, which is very exciting, and they're launching a whole new effort to really staff up to draft laws at all levels, which is critical. This is 0 Hour and Fridays for the Future. Thanks to Attell are in the mix, and Endangered Species Coalition, who will be presenting on Wednesday. Family Farm Action Alliance, you know. Environmental Defense Fund, Felice, is going to be giving us an update on the inside movement strategy on those Wednesday meetings. And, hold on. And let's see. So she's with EDF. Then the National Lawyers Guild folks are here on the call, and Netroots Nation, which we'll hear more about from Attell. March for Science, which worked on the Off-Fossil Fuels Act with over 400 groups. And then several individual experts are coming into the field here with former EPA administrators, and not administrators, but high-level people who are experts in certain areas, and they're connected to the U.S. Climate Action Network. And I have Attell's name on here because Attell has been leading on a lot of this, and it wouldn't be happening without her. Next slide. So the bill process to come up with a bill outline. This is quite an undertaking, but so to start with, I just want to say our role is that I see it as the role of a librarian. So we're going to be gathering and presenting information on the big spreadsheet you'll see. And so that's important so that we don't get too attached, even though we have particular policy passions, et cetera, whatnot. we really want to approach this in a neutral, objective way, and everyone will be seeing everything we do on spreadsheets. So that's part of the transparency, inclusiveness with open worksheets and teams. All of that will create the credibility for the work, just like the processes we went to create the digest. And that's really what we're trying to do, is make sure that we're providing a neutral, credible environment so that people feel that they can really rely on the substance that we're putting out. When it comes to content, we already know we're starting with the policy digest as the foundational outline, by no means the end of the story. And then the OFF Act, as I mentioned, had like 400 groups behind it. It was an excellent document. VICA is a document that U.S. Climate Action Network has pulled together. Thrive Agenda is something the Green New Deal Network has pulled together and is working on legislation for. Our existing bill package, which we'll go into later. And then, of course, new ideas. And this is where a lot of our work is going to, I think, need to happen. What's missing from all of this? And beyond just objective goals like 100% by 2030 or something, what is the plan, the implementation plan? And then what is the oversight to see once you pass these laws, that it's actually going to be implemented. So there's a lot of pieces on content that we'll be adding to what we already have. And then partners, and I just mentioned several partners, but we'll be working to find partners within each policy sector who can both contribute to the information and then also join the effort, obviously, to the network to help pass it. But importantly, at the early stage, we want everyone who has vested interest in these topics involved and included as early on as possible. Next line, please. You can see all the ideas. There's a lot of groups out there.
Can I just ask a question about the last slide really quickly?
Sure, please, Untitled.
So, one of the things that's come up when I reach out to a lot of different groups about this to ask them to join or support or lean in some way is that different folks have really different visions. Some of them want to fight for an omnibus bill, others want to fight for very specific bills, and others are really keen to think about budget reconciliation just because the margin in the Senate is so slim. And I wondered if we could be really explicit that we're like a big tent where we welcome whether you want an omnibus bill or if you're just focused on one specific bill or several specific bills or budget reconciliation. We love your energy. We want you to be part of the family. We don't see it as like a fight to the death or a competition. We see it as a sort of, figuring out how we can all help each other, sort of mutual assistance and strategy building so that, we don't turn anyone away. And I think you did that in a lot of the conferences and a lot of the conversations, but maybe somehow we can like write that up in a more crystalline fashion, just so that everyone knows, like, we welcome you no matter what your stylistic preference is, and no matter which substantive issue is your key issue that you're excited about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we do need to do a write-up about this whole little undertaking, and we can emphasize that. Thank you for emphasizing that. I mean, welcome all is how I try to open everything. The most important aspect of this is that we create this open tent. We're trying to build a mass movement here. And so everyone has to feel welcome, and that's going to be complicated in some respects as we move forward. And there will be, we're going to be talking about how we're going to deal with internal disagreements, et cetera, as we go through this. But forming the open tent is just a fundamental paradigm. So open, wide, welcoming. And as we said before, pieces will move on their own schedule. And, we'll check things off and we'll try to stay abreast, and you can jump into the moving action on different things as you choose. But all right, so moving on, but thank you again, Untitled, and that can never really be emphasized enough. We're trying to create a big party, basically, to save the planet. And I like throwing parties where everybody feels welcome. It's part of the fundamental tenets of our Radical Fairy community. Is the only mantra we really have is welcome home. And that's because we've been made to feel so unwelcomed in most of our lives everywhere. So this idea goes deep. And I think it's part of the
beautiful mantra.
Welcome home. Yeah, it's to a bunch of people who felt like they were, weren't welcome anywhere. It's a big deal. So yay. Well, all right. I'm getting caught up in that. All right, next slide. Oh, should we go back one? What did we have that last one? Oh, so yes, the policy sector teams. This is critical, obviously. So you can see the list. They're all there, we think. It could be that we discover some new ones. Most of them we've been working with for a while. And so they're already established, and they have teams, and new people have been volunteering for all of these, which is why we're sort of doing this reboot moment of to try to bring everybody the same level of understanding what we're doing. So there they are, and this is where the real work is going to happen. And it's really quite exciting because we're going to dive into all the substantive policy things. I don't know that we need to list them off. I was thinking that we could introduce the policy leads maybe at the end if whoever's here from those. But let's just go ahead and get through this so we have time for discussion and conversation. Policy sector team, the roles. So within each one of those, we've identified 5 roles. And it could turn out that, you know, one person plays 2 of these roles or one person plays all of these roles, depending on how small the you know, teams are. But there were so many people volunteering, it seemed to make sense to try to parse this out a little bit. So the admin lead would keep the team list and the meeting schedule and answer questions, onboard new people, that kind of thing. Policy lead would help collect the policy documents, review those when people are sending things to me and other people on something. I'll forward it to the policy lead, and they'll make sure it gets on the web, to the spreadsheet, etc. So the policy leads will be sort of like deputy legislative directors. If I were back in my old job, I would have a legislative director on each one of the policy sectors that I work with directly. So that's what I'm hoping to get to that point. And no experience needed, and I'm happy to train everybody. Network lead, that's really the one that's keeping track of all the groups. And you'll see in the spreadsheet, there's already some groups I put in there, like the GMO group, advocacy group, or the, I forget the, you know, different ones, you know how it goes. So you'll find those things come along on your Facebook feed where people are advertising. Those groups are trying to really make change, and they're in a campaign mode about it. You want to capture those because those will be, you know, good allies. So the network lead is basically helping us to do all the outreach to find groups to bring in and keeping track of all those leads and who's going after those leads and, you know, all that sort of administrative oversight there. Then the bill package lead. So there are 10 now. It's probably going to grow rapidly in early February, our bill package. And we're going to look at that later today. There's going to be a video for folks who want to stay on. And so we'd like, if the bills fall within your policy sector, we'd like you to, for somebody to adopt that bill or a series of bills to be point on following those. We'll probably put you in touch with whatever coalition is working on them, just so you can be the point that's keeping a tab on what's moving, what's happening on those bills, and keeping everyone else here informed. And then just the general members, you'll be helping to do all of this work, and everything you do will feed, you'll send it to the leads within your sector team. This is just to try to get us an organizational framework for information flow. It could be that some of these groups are small and efficient, and that's great. Could be that some of them are big and need a little bit more structure. So we'll see as we go along how this plays out. Next slide, please. So 2 worksheets, and we tried to simplify this because I know I sent out emails with lots of information. So EB stands for Earth Bill. The team worksheet has all the team contacts listed, the emails. This is where you're going to use as a worksheet to, oh, somebody thought of this group. There's a segment of each sheet where you can put new groups. And then there's a set where somebody sent in this policy. Oh, okay, let's put it here. And that way you see, you know, what you're working on as a team. And then there's the policy worksheet. And that's really where we're going to spend most of our lives for the next several months. And you'll see that in a minute. We're going to pull it up. But it has the digest all listed there, and already has the House and Senate plans digested. And we'll be adding columns for lots of the major pieces that are in play. So whatever comes out of the Thrive Agenda bill, different bills that are being worked on, we'll have each a column for them, and that we will start to really see the lay of the land on where the commonality is on policy. And this will start to, down the yellow brick road, one step at a time, this will start to paint the picture of where we're going on a comprehensive outline of a bill. And so that you'll get very familiar with that sheet. And so this is really for the nerds. We're going in deep now. This is not superficial stuff. We're going to be deep into analysis. And tell if you want to break in at any point. I see y'all handling the email, chat. That's wonderful. Thank you. As we have these worksheets set up, only the leads can post in them for now. We're just trying, and then everyone else can view. And that's just, again, to try to have some sort of information flow and control there so it doesn't get completely unruly. But we can discuss and review that as time goes along. And let's see, there's also a listserv that's been set up for the policy sector teams. Most of you have been added to it. We're still finalizing that. And we'll use that, and I'll basically be sending, the overall management direction, next steps, to-do items there. So that way, when we get new people and whatnot, people can go back and look at old emails, and the work path will be clear from that. Chat keeps popping up. So there are a couple other listservs we'll talk about in other meetings, but the adopted district has one, general CCP, you get emails from me, and then MailChimp. And I apologize that I know there's duplication on those last two, and so we're still struggling to work all that out and get it in one place so we don't have to keep emailing you in different places.
That's okay. It's just growing pains. It's normal.
Oh, thank you. And Christine Key, who we'll make sure you all know if you don't already, but we'll have to put her, have her come and talk. She'll be going over the spreadsheets, so you'll get to know her. She's going to be leading this whole policy sector thing. And so she's already been doing an incredible job of that. And she'll be communicating with individual policy sector teams via email. Next slide. So I just wanted to spend a minute on the power of legislation to get you excited about the possibilities of what can happen that may not be being considered in the bills that are being written yet. We'll see some of them do have these things. So I'm just going to list some of them. They're exciting. You could ban all new fossil fuel infrastructure nationwide. The OFAC had that provision instead of fighting those pipeline fights. This gets the pipeline activists and the indigenous community very excited to hear this idea. You make manufacturers responsible for their plastic waste. This is already in the plastics bill. And big oil and big ag tax subsidies. There are bills for that. I'm not sure if they tackle the ag part. Mandate utilities source 100% renewables nationwide. That would be a heck of a flip of a switch in terms of setting in motion economic forces to build renewable energy with a guaranteed revenue stream. And I don't think that's being discussed. That was in the OFAC. You could outlaw internal combustion engines by a certain date, which New York and California have already done. You could take utilities into public ownership, or at least infrastructure and transmission lines. There's all sorts of combinations. Could really help workers and communities that have been ignored by the industries that took everything and then left. And so you could really help them, which I think is happening. You could ban toxic pesticides. You could create criminal liability for polluters. You can mandate corporate responsibility. There's all sorts of things called corporate responsibility ideas, and the Center for Responsible Banking, Principles for Responsible Banking. You could make those into law and stop making it so optional how corporations treat people and environment. You could outlaw bank funding of fossil fuels. There's a bill coming on that. You could ban products from protected forest around the globe, and that bill's already ready and should be filed any day now. The chat keeps coming up in mine, so I can't see. And then we could really clean up polluted neighborhoods. There's legislation to deal with that. And generally, obviously, the big idea is to make air safe to breathe and stop global demise as an added benefit of all these pieces. And then we could establish very clear greenhouse gas reduction plans and measure that progress. So you can see it's very exciting to talk about the possibilities. Next slide, please. Uh-oh, something happened and it got very big. Okay. So just a couple thoughts on legislative paradigms. We went over those briefly before, and we can talk about them more today. I just want to open everyone's mind to the possibilities of thinking, bigger than a lot of times people go into legislative processes thinking. So envision new governmental structures and roles. What new agencies? What, think outside the existing box, basically. Beyond the current legal frameworks. Don't get stuck in the Clean Air Act or other laws. Think, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and maybe there's a new law that needs to be written. Don't worry about plastics or politics or votes. Not at this stage of the game. Actual solutions to the problem. That's where this needs to lead, I think. And then keeping in mind that we're joining movements and activists. So not everything fits perfectly in the, whatever, lens we're going to use of greenhouse gases or other lenses, but we're trying to build a movement of groups that are not really powerful alone and could be together. And then obviously we talk about it all the time, the greenhouse gas reductions and calculations, which is going to be critical, of course. And we're going to be highlighting the spreadsheets, and emails have gone out to figure out how to do that based on the greenhouse gas impacts, or I guess right now it's the greenhouse gas pollution levels, and then so the corresponding impact reductions using the drawdown listings, which is all organized that way anyway, but we didn't really translate that way, but we will now. And then the last is this community protection idea, both environmentally and economically. Environmentally for the people who've suffered the worst of it, and then economically for the people who are living through the transitions. We can continue to refine those things, of course, but that's the general idea. All right, I feel like I could stop for a second. Well, the next slide, go ahead. How long are we into this? 27 minutes. I think we missed one. Can you go back one? Work approach. And this is what we're going to be doing together. So we'll be having these individual policy sector meetings, and this is what all of you will be doing. It's a little bit of what I said, but we'll be reviewing the policy digest, getting people to vote on that, and register and vote, because that's where we're going to start to crowdsource the collective opinion. Of course, we'll be doing a lot more of that after we get further into this new document. Collect new documents wherever you see real momentum, organizing mojo, policy passions, find those documents. Like I said, identifying missing parts, the how, I think, is going to be a big piece of that. And compare other bills and coalition policies. That's what we're doing. Outreach to the groups. We already talked about that. Sector report backs. So this is just an idea still, but everyone keeps thinking about April 22nd is Earth Day, and the week preceding that, I think, might be a good time for this climate Congress idea. And maybe that would be the opportunity for us to present back all of our working groups to, maybe a full week where we're basically presenting all of our findings that we've gone through for the last several months. April sounds a little tight for something but we'll see how quickly we get to work and how much progress we make. Then we'll have a process for review and input and revision from our work, open to this much broader audience that will have come together for that convergence. One piece I'm curious about is whether we can come up with a set of early demands. We'll have to see, and we can brainstorm that. And I would encourage you to brainstorm that in your policy sector groups, particularly as you're reading things in the digest and other places. You're like, oh, that's a great idea. Why should we have to wait for that to happen? And so it could be that some of those get on a short list that we can at least hand into the existing process of the administration and elsewhere, because it could be that some of those would be achievable and they just are a little hesitant. And then the themes: gold standard bill, greenhouse gas reductions, environmental justice, and just transition. Next slide.
Todd, can I make a suggestion about one way that we could really get a lot of this stuff on the radar screen of the Biden administration and a number of lawmakers? Is, Biden said there'd be this climate summit for Earth Day, and we could do our next electronic symposium a couple days before that same week, and just make sure to a number of people, like to re-invite Senator Merkley, invite somebody from AOC's office, et cetera. And that way there'll be almost surely those people will also go to whatever it is that Biden organizes for Earth Day. So if there's enough people that were in both meetings, it's a way of making sure that everyone in the official meeting organized by the Biden administration, with a lot of progressive lawmakers and their staff present, will have top of mind that there's a big growing coalition of Americans from all walks of life who want climate legislation. So it's kind of like sort of advocacy strategy.
That sounds wonderful. Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing. The days preceding, as a lead into it, and set the tone for the whole next step. I don't know what Biden's climate summit is about or what they're thinking for that, but that sounds like a wonderful way to merge all of these things. I'm not sure what the chat's doing, but if everyone has thoughts in the chat, you can, or do your yes or whatever the people can do in the chat if you want to chime in on these ideas.
I have just a question. Judith Weiss, who is on this call, is wondering where are the oceans in this? And I'm wondering if this was an oversight. That's one. Basically, two new policy areas. Oceans. The other one is you mentioned the whole thing about investment. There are many people who've been working in the investment space. It's been one of the most successful ones. The Stop the Money pipeline is huge. And how to put that into forms of legislation would be great. I know the Biden team has already got that as part of their climate team, investment screens for Wall Street, and other financial institutions. So I'm just wondering, those two, oceans and financial investment, screens, is that?
Great, absolutely. So those, yes, definitely. So land, water, and forest, I think we put oceans there, but we can double check that. And, there's a conference, I sent a conference that the UN is having on with Ocean, the group from Oceania, whatever it's called, and they're having a big update on that. So yeah, we definitely want that piece in there, and then investment as well. So we may have to create a separate group for that. I've been talking to someone about the corporate responsibility and liability issue, and maybe that financial piece would fit in there. And there is a federal bill to force the federal government to divest its pensions like they do at some of the state levels. So that would fit in that category. So thank you for bringing those up. And yeah, we'll definitely tweak those lists. And if we don't have a place where something fits, we can make it maybe a little catch-all for, dangling ideas.
And
thank
just
you for that.
to be inspired by Judith's point, I realized the second that she wrote it, that we haven't yet done like a really heavy round of outreach with all the ocean focused NGOs and stakeholders, but we could definitely do that. And I was very inspired by that message. So Judith, I don't know if you want to team up with me. We could write together to Oceana and all the sort of usual suspects to just loop them into what we're doing and say, hey, do you want to join? Do you want to lean in? Maybe you guys even want to lead if you want to have like a little group that's just thinking about like blue carbon and stuff like that. And to the point about the financial stuff, if you guys all think it's a good idea, I could reach out to Ceres, CERES, and Green Century Capital, and a bunch of sort of green groups in that green investment and shareholder activism space, like As You Sow, and ask them if they want to join us as well. And maybe, with that kind of expertise, they can bring some leadership that we might not yet have in our group that would help crystallize our work.
Hallelujah. That's fabulous. That's exactly. Sears has been on my radar screen for some time. We started to invite them to the symposium. We didn't get there. So that would be fabulous. All of that. And that's wonderful. And then there's the Center for Climate Integrity that is working on all the lawsuits. I've been in touch with them, but we want to wrap them into this as well. Oops. All right, yay. And so Etel brings up Etel is the master at this outreach, basically. Obviously been in this world for a while, but she can hopefully help teach us a little bit and give us a little tutorials a little bit on how to do this, because all the sectors are going to be basically on the same path. And so we'll be making this list of groups that we want to engage with. And then we have to figure out who's going to go talk to them and how best to do that and all those sorts of things, and identify who in your group should do that. So that'll be a staffing type of analysis. You just have to really figure out who has the best skill set for that. And then maybe Etel can coach us through just the basics of how to go about that on our next call.
Sure.
Are,
And I'm happy to tag up and do teamwork with everybody who wants. I've done so much outreach now. I have all these little cookie cutter messages so that'll just make our life easier. So Judith, you and I can team up and reach out to a whole bunch of the oceans folks. And Francesca, we can reach out to a bunch of folks in the CSR space. And I'll just, yeah, it'd be so great to do this with you guys. Wonderful.
I'm so excited. Make me so happy to hear y'all all these connections, and this is exactly where we're gonna go. We got to take off now, get ready to fly, and this is wonderful. All right, that's just a list of all the tools and the meetings that I mentioned before. So next slide, just so you'd have them all in one place. Timeline we've sort of talked about. April goal for the Climate Congress, policy sector report backs essentially, and the network launch. Well, we'll talk about the network crafting on the Wednesday calls. By April, maybe we could have some early core demands. You never know. See how that goes. We'll definitely have a brainstorming session on that at the next meeting, and so that'll just get the juices flowing. It could be fun, or maybe you could do that in your breakout groups. And I'm not breakout, but the policy sector meeting. So then April to August, we'll be working on cementing this agreement and formalizing it into an outline. And by August, we'll be partnering with Netroots Nation, it sounds like, if all goes well, for the pre-conference. And I think that'll be the time that we're all digging in big time to these solutions, and hopefully our marketing partners will be able to participate. And so that's the whole idea.
More information. I'll have a lot more information for our team about what Netroots Nation will want from us. They've sort of tentatively agreed to let the whole pre-conference for Netroots Nation be about a climate legislation, actually. So, you know, every year it's the biggest gathering of progressives in America each year. This year it's going to be a bit weird. It'll be hybrid because of the pandemic. So depending on how vaccinations go, it might be, you know, partly in person, partly online. I asked my former boss, Henry Waxman. He might be willing to like help keynote, but I think, you know, at the end of this month, we'll get much more clear instructions from Netroot Nations about, do they want us to organize speakers? Do they want us to organize an agenda? And then perhaps we may have to lean in quite heavily to help them organize a fantastic pre-conference and put our best foot forward and get a lot of people super excited in August and joining us, you know, for like major next level, thousands of groups coming on board.
Very exciting. So I think the April event will sort of little be like a test run, you know, a precursor, and we'll know after that what kind of things are going to work and what content. And so hopefully we'll have a little bit of training on this idea going into it. Atel, can you just remind people what, you know, Netroots Nation, their sort of their audience and their...
Yes. Okay. So every year there's this huge gathering of progressives. It's not that focused on the environment typically. A lot of times it's unions and local chapters of the Democratic Party. There's a lot of folks from the women's rights movement, women's right to choose people come in large numbers. There's a lot of racial justice stuff there, racial equity groups. They're really interested in the pipelines. But I think just in general, they were so excited to do a big push for climate legislation. And typically Netroots Nation is this, you can Google it, you know, they describe some of their old events and you can see agendas for their previous mega meetings of the last couple of years. There's almost always a pre-conference on a specific theme. And they'd be basically willing to give us the pre-conference. And so that's our chance to get in front of thousands of groups and leading activists, progressives, who may not be environmentalists at all. But it's just a chance to like break through out of the silos to a very big audience.
Yowza, yabba dabba doo, here we come. That's so exciting, it's beyond me. If anyone knows anyone that Citizens, what's it called? Global Citizens. And you know, you will think about outreach there. That's another huge platform, and that would be interesting to plug into. And if there are other mega events of those natures that you know are familiar with, and think about that, and let's keep building. But I think we've got a lot on our plate, so we're good. Next slide, please. We're almost done with these slides. Oh, well, the climate bill package. So I'm not going to go into the detail because the idea is at the end of the meeting, we're going to play the video. Depending on how the timing is going. 1:40. Yeah, I think we'll have plenty of time. And it's just to bring us back into the substance of the bills that we already have on our plate and just get our minds back in that groove of thinking about legislation, which is where we're headed. So they're all listed there, as you know. And so at the end, we'll play the video, Christine, that's linked right there at the top there. Next slide. So the next steps, as you know, join a policy sector team if you're not already, if you'd like, of course. Study the digest and all the homework. Volunteer for the team leads. And if you want, you can already start to, I don't know, it's a little messy, but in the chat, if you want to start volunteering for certain leads, just to get an idea of the interest, that would be fine. But you're going to be doing that within your policy sector team more directly. Find the groups, start looking for the groups, like Phil was just talking about Oceana and other people mentioning groups. Feel free to put groups in the chat, but we're going to have spreadsheets for this kind of thing. So, but just to get the ideas flowing. And then I had this idea for folks to adopt a policy subtopic. So, you know, there's about, I don't know, 80 really operational, I think, maybe more. So anyway, there's a lot of subtopics. And if you have a passion for a particular area, it wouldn't hurt if we had people who adopted each one, so that way we can know somebody's tracing those down. We have a lot of them to follow up on. Then we're going to get these policy sector team meetings scheduled, and that's a very important and tricky piece of this organizing pie, because I want to sort of attend these. So I'm still thinking about the math on this, but if we tried to do 2 a day, there's about 15 sectors. We did 2 a day. That would basically have us in a 2-week rotation, and I would just come to every other one probably. So just think about that, and we got to figure that out. So the sector leads and everybody, I don't know how we're actually going to pull this together, but that's our next big logistical abracadabra. Then adopt. It says, oh, that's adopt a district. Yeah, so we'll cover that in details on Wednesday, but encouraging everybody to continue to do that, please, and find those local activists that care about those bills. And then vote, like I mentioned on the policy digest. So that's all things everyone can start doing if you're looking for stuff to do. Next slide. There's the homework. You can, just so you had it in one place, you can click all those documents. Next one. And that's it. So creating the Earth Bill in our network. I feel like we're doing pretty well so far. It's a lot, but it's going well. So I'll stop with that, and I think we should take some questions or comments or whatever people want to do.
Can you go back to the list of homework, please? We didn't get it.
Oh, sure, I can go. I can talk about that, but I sent it in several emails, and it's on the slide.
Oh, okay.
If you go back to that list, I can just comment a little bit more on what those are. Oh, that would have to be on this camera over here. It seems like it's disappeared.
Can I give a couple updates as well?
Yes, by all means. So let's hold that thought for a second, and we'll go back to the homework in a bit and at the end probably. But those are just all the documents that we want to start studying, and we're going to be including them on the spreadsheets that Christine is going to take you through in a minute. And we're trying to figure, some of them are already digested on the website, so we're trying to figure out if we can push a button and like have VICA and the OFF Act and several of the bills that are already digested just show up in the new spreadsheet. So that would be very easy. That's the hope. And so just stay tuned a little bit on that. But these are just the documents to familiarize yourself with, because it's where all the action is, basically. Go ahead and please take it away.
Great. I was just going to give a little update about some of the outreach. So part of this is a bit scary, because the more we bring lots of folks in that have very divergent viewpoints, the more I worry that, you know, this will change a little bit, because all the new folks joining will have very strong ideas about what they want to do and not do. But with Todd's guidance, I reached out to a whole bunch of youth groups. You know, Greta Thunberg's group, which is called Fridays for Future, and also 0 Hour, which you probably all know Jamie Margolin, who's been part of that lawsuit suing the United States government for climate change with all those youth activists. So yeah, FFF, 0 Hour, a group called Youth for Nature, and Sunrise. And the first 3 are in. They all want to join. Sunrise is, I think, really on the fence and wondering. But I have a feeling soon we'll get an infusion of youth activism and youth energy. And hopefully they'll just like, you know, sort of do their own thing. And I don't know if we should, you know, be too set in our ways, but hopefully, you know, we'll find a nice mix of giving them plenty of guidance and incorporating them to everything that we're doing, but also being very flexible. I have a feeling they're going to want to do stuff that's totally left field to what we're doing, like TikTok or whatever. So that's the youth update. And then the Green New Deal update. When Todd and I had been going back and forth with Sunrise, it turns out that Sunrise is part of a group of 15 or 16 organizations that are all in the Green New Deal group, GND. And a big part of what they do is nothing to do with law, but a big part of it is to do with getting climate legislation passed. And I think that they were a bit nervous and felt like some kind of rivalry when we first reached out. They've been trying really hard, just like what Todd was saying, everyone's welcome, you know, it's just like everyone's at home here. It's about friendship and trust and camaraderie and mutual assistance and not, you know, trying to do something different, you know. So just to let you all know, Sunrise is connecting us to the Green New Deal group leadership, which is doing a lot to mobilize for climate legislation. And it's not yet clear how they want to work with us or not. So fingers crossed. And then the other big thing is that there's a number of human rights groups that probably would be willing to join in a little human rights grouplet, like Human Rights Watch's environment director was keen, and Earth Rights. And that's quite neat because they all have a lot of experience with how environmental questions in the US affect international human rights, like abuse of indigenous people in Latin America and Brazil, you know, indigenous leaders being killed for beef that winds up in our handbags in the United States, for example. So yeah, that's the little human rights update and the youth update and the Green New Deal / Sunrise update.
Yay, this is so exciting. It's beyond exciting. All right, so it's about 10 of, well, it's an hour later. It's about 10 of the hour. And I think the next step, well, I guess we could take some questions first and then, or do we want to go right into Christine? Maybe a couple questions if it's okay. That way I can dart out. And if y'all don't mind taking it from there, Etel, are you able to stay to the 1:30 or at least until they play the video? In case I leave. Oh, hello?
Etel, you're muted. So.
Oh, I'm muted?
Sorry, I was saying yes. Thumbs up.
Oh, okay. Oh, no worries. My video has disappeared, so I can't see everybody anymore. But so maybe a few questions, and then I'll jump off the call, and then let Christine take you through the nitty gritty of the sheets, and then play the video for the bill package. So, is there a stack for questions?
Yes, we have.
If they're not,
Maple. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, this is Maple in North Carolina. I have a quick question about clean energy standard. I haven't been able to read every word of everything, but that would be really important. Is anybody doing clean energy standard on our major list? Over.
Yeah, so that's the electricity team. I mean, the electricity policy sector. And there's a whole bunch on that. So definitely join that sector. We don't really have the form up. If somebody could put the volunteer form into the chat. So like if you've not joined a sector, you probably fill out that form before, but if you want to join a sector, that's, you know, you don't have to fill out all the other information, just click the sector you want.
I put that up a couple of times in the chat, so people have seen.
Oh, wonderful, okay. There was a question about the homework. I don't know if there's anything more to say about that at this point. We're going to be reading those and looking at them. Obviously, look for the sections that apply most to your sector, but it's interesting reading, a lot of it. Regina, did you have something else on that? That's okay. Who's next on stack?
Well, go ahead. Never mind.
Oh, go ahead, Regina. Sorry, honey.
I was just going to say, you said you have sent out the same page with all of those readings or that information. Is that correct, Todd?
Right. in a few different emails, but the one I sent yesterday announcing this meeting, it has a link to the PowerPoint presentation, and the PowerPoint presentation has all those documents linked in it.
Okay, okay, I didn't see that. Oh, okay. Mhm.
Should show up at the bottom.
Thank you.
We have a question from Lisa Petrell.
Hi, Lisa.
Hello. I sent an email to Todd and Christine, because this is kind of maybe to form a new policy sector group on nuclear energy. I see that it's completely unaddressed right, and I'm working with a group, Citizens Resistance Act 2, who has close relations with
Lisa, your audio is not.
nuclear.
Yeah, Greg, can you tell her the audio? Lisa,
Yeah.
something's wrong with your audio. I thought it was me, but it's saying it's yours. So sorry about. But nuclear is in electricity as well, and there's a whole team. And Catherine Skopik is. I don't know if she's Catherine. Are you on the call? If you could say hi to Lisa and connect up on that. And Christine, if you could add Lisa to the electricity team, if you want, Lisa.
Christine's not. I mean, Catherine's not here.
Oh, okay.
We have a question.
All right. Well, we'll just go ahead.
Gia, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, sorry, I didn't hear you mention my name. Yeah, thank you for opening this up to all of us. I did watch the slideshow, and it brought up a common concern in a couple places, not on the slides, but in the oral presentation. I heard some very common greenwashing terminology, and I just want to bring attention to that in general. It has to do with mostly with terrestrial vegetation sequestration. It comes up a lot. There was mention of biofuels as clean energy, and I'm wondering if that term is going to be used, it should be defined. But woody biomass, for your information, if you don't already know, emits more carbon than coal in its combustion. So that's just a term that really is important. And then to understand, and
Yeah.
And then in many climate policy making, including Green New Deals, federal and state, I'm hearing, and in policy bills, I am hearing a lot of confusion around the mixing of increasing carbon sequestration through vegetation with reduced emissions. And somewhere in the presentation, it's stated that I think in the context of cover crops, that's reducing emissions. It's not, obviously, reducing emissions. It's capturing. Yeah.
So, okay, well, thank you for these input, and these are very important topics. Yes, we're a little bit conversant in some of them, and having created I think you're talking about the digest itself, right? Where you're seeing all this terminology, not in my presentation today or something, or.
No, I'm sorry, there was a PowerPoint presentation that was talked through by, I'm sorry, I didn't remember his name, but he's doing marketing is how he put it.
Oh yeah, Joshua
Yeah.
Pavey. So, okay, yes. So, well, that's the video we're going to show again today. So it's great that you can help us point out those terminology issues, and we'll tackle them. I think most of that is just reflecting what the bill drafters and sponsors are saying. But thank you for that. And I think it would be great if you wanted to join those policy sector teams to make sure these issues are thoroughly vetted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So I forget which policy sector team. I'm sorry, what was your name again?
My name is Gia Neswald. I'm in Western Mass, and I'm involved in the Massachusetts Green New Deal Alliance that just changed its name to Mass Renews. It's not just mistaken use of terminology. It's that improper carbon accounting is occurring as a result of equating
No,
increased
I understand.
concentration with reduced emissions.
Right.
Thank
All right. So I don't mean to catch up too much, but we're gonna have those kinds of conversations in the policy sector team meetings. So there's definitely going to be space for this exact conversation. And so great. Thank you for being in there. And if you could just put your email and name in the chat to Greg, or to Christina rather, and we'll make sure you would get added to that, the proper policy sector, which I can't remember. So good. The New York News, Working Families Project in Massachusetts. That's great. That was where I spent most of my life in Massachusetts state government. All right. How are we doing on time? Is there a long list of other questions, or how's it look?
I think we should move on.
Okay, yeah, I think so. Because Christine will be here to answer any questions, and so will Attell. So Christine, are you ready to be queued up and to take away it on your spreadsheets?
Can you see my screen share?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Attell. Todd, before you jump off, I think it would be helpful if you could just briefly talk about this sheet.
Which sheet?
It is the EB policy worksheet, so the digest where we're comparing House and Senate. You were changing some columns around and stuff. Could you just say a few words on this?
Sure. Okay. So I don't have that video feed anymore, but I know the sheet. So as you'll see in this sheet, at the tabs at the bottom have all the various policy sector teams, and then a few other of our teams that aren't really specific policy sector, but that's all right. And then we've taken the digest, which is really the wealth of expertise from this whole community. By the time you get to that digest, it reflects a lot of input from a lot of players. And we put it all in the spreadsheet, basically. The digest actually started in that raw form a while ago. And so we're going back to that process, really. It finally dawned on me that made the most sense. And so it also feels simpler, even though I know it's a lot of work. So we have the digest all listed on the left, all the provisions under the subtopics, just like on the website. And then the next column is supposed to be the document links. So D1, D2, D3. Those are the documents, again, from the website, but you should be able to hover over them and see the name if it's been copied right from where we're pulling this. And those two columns are going to be locked. And then after that, there's a column on the the House Climate Select Committee's report. And that just basically they went through it and saw where there were elements in the House report that matched the digest. And actually, if you look at that report in the digest, you can see a lot of similarities. The digest was shared with them in its raw form back in November of the year before while they were doing this. There was a whole open process to compile that House report of input anyway. And then next to it is the Senate. And then next to it, I think we have new ideas or what's missing as a column. And so you'll be inputting things there. We'll be adding bills across the top that are relevant to these topics. So the bill package bills will go in their sectors. And then like I say, they're mostly digested on the website. So we'll see, some or not. That will have to happen. And as you'll see, then we'll add other documents that are relevant going across. We're going to highlight the whole sheet. So like yellow will be, I don't know, the top third of greenhouse gas impacts or something, in the middle third and the lower third. So you just have that vibe of how big a problem you're solving with that particular area. And as we go across the way on the columns, soon we will get to the point where, like, okay, we're going to draft language, or we're going to find language for this section, and we'll insert the bill language right there. And then if a group comes along, like a big group, a coalition, and says, well, we'd like to have our input on all of this, we might create a duplicate sheet where we have individual coalition entities giving their input. So again, you can get the idea. We're going to try to have an open process where people put information. We can all read it. We can all see it. We can see some countervailing arguments. And this is just like a big education journey together, but in one place where we can see it all together. Is that enough, Christine, of a general opening for that?
That's perfect, Todd. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for letting me do this from work vacation. And we're in great hands. I'm just so happy everybody's here. you're all blowing my mind. And as scary as this journey is, it's fortified by the, you know, all of y'all being part of it. So I wish I could see your faces. I miss you, and thank you all. And I'll say goodbye and leave it to the rest of y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Todd.
everybody. Thank y'all. All right. Bye-bye.
Question. Do we do a,
Tel, can you see this screen that I'm sharing? Can everyone see this screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so this is the other sheet that the policy sector teams will be diving deep into. Todd has set this up. It's still a working document, so we're working our way through it. At the beginning, this is the template that we're using for every single policy sector team. And in the beginning is the sector meeting schedule. So Todd noted that he'd like to attend the meetings. This is the best way to get him into your meeting when you're meeting.
Yeah.
So if you put your policy sector team meeting day, date, and time, he can review these, all of the policy sectors, all 15 of them. The magic man is going to make this happen. I don't know how he's going to do it, but if you guys can just put that in there, he can, you know, quickly and easily check in there when your next meeting is, and he can attend. That's the best way to get him there. And then next, he's set up, as the slide presented, we have the team admin lead, we have the legislative lead, the network lead, the bill package lead. So right now we have moved the policy sector leads from the last go round into these positions. And then if there were second and third leads in each of those sectors, we're hoping that they're going to take the lead on one of these other areas. And then here to the right is really the responsibility of each one of those leads. And that was listed on the slide as well. And then this is what Todd was talking about, the groups. As the groups become interested in joining, everything can be plotted in right here, and then policies as well. So here's the policy intake form. So anyone that's seeking policy proposals to stop greenhouse gases and global warming, Todd set up this intake form with all of the information, which will go to a spreadsheet, and that'll be for your use. And then at the bottom will be all of the team members. Now, I'm sorry, but I've been slow to get this together because we're pulling from 3 different intake sheets. So we first transferred over the people that were in the groups the last time, and then all of the new people that have been joining since the early December symposium. We had a big rush then, and just recently we had a lot of other people join in. So the welcome letter has been going out to the groups, and then we've been populating this form here. So here we have buildings, and the people are all listed at the bottom. When you go into this form, well, I don't want to, okay, so right now the access to the form, as Todd said, can only be posted from the lead, and that may change over time, depending what his thoughts are on that. And then each of the sectors have been populated to date.
Christine, could we make it so that maybe you and Todd can be set as also having that access, just as a backup?
Access to the sheet?
You said only the lead. Yep. Yes. Thank you. That would be so great.
Not the team members at this point, just the leads. And Todd and I do, we do.
And Todd and you. Okay, wonderful. Okay, just to make sure you and Todd also have.
Yeah. So I don't want to go through all of them, but they are all here. They're populated. And so I really think that that's it for this form. So I'll stop sharing unless there's a question.
I have a question, which is, I mean, can we see do other people have read-only access, or we just don't have any access?
Yes, everyone will have viewing access. So everyone can get into the sheet and view it. And the leads at this point can populate it. So if they want to add a document, you send that to your lead. The lead will review it and put it in.
okay.
Okay.
May I ask, do we do a stack for questions, Christine, or do we?
No, go ahead, Regina. Go ahead.
Okay. On the previous sheet that Todd just showed us, that's for the second round. In other words, what we have already done stays in the same format, right? And then And so the next round will use this format,
Yes,
correct? Okay.
yes. And then at some point, the stuff in this new worksheet will be put into the digest, the other form that he showed us, that he just reviewed with us.
We'll go into the
Yeah.
digest.
After all of this information on this worksheet is reviewed and discussed,
Right, yeah.
there'll be points from here that will go on to that digest that will need to go there.
From his page, not this one. I mean, this is just for the structure of what we're doing.
Right.
And so from his page, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Just basically, how do I access this? You sent some emails today and yesterday, I think. Do you, in the email, do you show how I would get into this, just to take a look? Okay, thanks. All right, great.
And there'll be another one coming again after this, so.
Wonderful, okay.
And the PowerPoint that Todd gave today will be posted on the digest. There's on that digest where the House and Senate report, the first tab on the bottom is info. So on that info tab will be the PowerPoint with all those slides that you guys can reference to, as well as all of the presentations that were already given by each of the policy sectors. And that was included in one of the emails that was sent already, in one of the welcoming emails. Okay. Now Todd wanted us to show the video. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, you want to show it?
Okay. I'll have to stop sharing.
And remember to click on the box to share computer audio, I think is what it says.
And Greg, this
Yeah.
is the video that sort of that's like the primer that was just in the email that we just got, right?
Yeah.
So I've already watched that. I don't know if everybody else has not, but if you haven't seen it, it's awesome. And if you have seen it, I guess we could, whoever has already seen it, we could log off and give you back 15 minutes of your day. But it's really well worth watching, even for me who like already kind of knew some of it. It was great.
It is 20 minutes, so it is long. So
I thought of it as like preparing you to do a pitch, like in case you ever have to go meet a senator or a congressperson or a CEO or a new NGO that you're trying to bring in or something. Like, how can you watch that and sort of like internalize it? It was really enlightening.
is it showing?
Phil, are you suggesting that we not show it?
Yeah, we don't have to if Todd sent it already in the link.
I'm not seeing it up here on this screen, but it is in the link that there's a link you just click from the email that Todd sent around.
Okay.
I would love to see it now. I'm all excited.
Oh, it's working.
Here it comes, Rachel.
Working.
Yay.
Okay. Yay. Wonderful. Great job, Christine. Thanks everybody. Bye.
Greg, is it up?
Yeah, it's up. Now click on full screen view, so it takes up the whole screen.
Where is that? On the bottom? Full screen.
Got it.
Thank you.
Oh, we lost the audio.
Uh-oh, I can't hear.
Turn your mic back on.
I think Christine has to unmute herself.
Yeah, unmute yourself.
Did that help?
Yep.
Yeah, it does. It does. Unmute. Yeah.
Bill, and I'll go into a little bit more depth here. I think the idea was to kind of just be able to run through all 10 bills so we get a feel of the full scope of what we're doing. And so hopefully I will do justice to all these bills. We're sort of been just drawing on the real expert presentations that we've all seen over the last several months on here and the discussions that came out of those. We've come to a place here that, we have a bill package that addresses both the biggest issues of greenhouse gas emissions as well as, carbon sequestration, but then also, air and water quality, public health, climate justice, and environmental pollution. So we'll get right to it here. As we broke it down in the press release, there's sort of 4 main categories that these 10 bills fit into: materials, forests and farming, fossil fuels, and then environmental justice. So we'll start with the materials, and the first one being the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. And I just included 2 statistics at the top that kind of help frame the discussion around this bill. 92% of plastic waste in America is never recycled. It ends up in landfills and waterways and oceans in foreign countries. Eventually ends up being consumed by us. The co-sponsors put forward a statistic in a lot of their materials that the average person on Earth consumes about a credit card worth of plastic every week. And the second statistic here is that this is an environmental pollution issue, but it's a carbon issue. And so the plastic industry as a whole, if it was a nation, it would be the 5th largest producer of emitter of greenhouse gases. I put on here that the industry warms the planet at twice the rate of the airline industry. And so, this was something that Brian Langloss from Oceana, when he was speaking to us about this, really stressed that it is a production problem more so than a consumer problem. So we're looking at the industry is producing 400 million tons of plastic per year. That's set to quadruple by 2050. So that gets us to what this bill does. The largest thing is that it holds the corporations producing this and making profit off this plastic responsible, and does so by basically forcing them to come up with ways to clean up and collect this plastic and to fund those processes while working with the EPA to do so. Also forces them to have established minimum recycled content requirements and pushing companies to produce reusable and fully recyclable products. And so it's all kind of gearing them to stop producing waste because they won't have to fund the cleanup for it quite as much. Secondly, it reduces and bans single-use non-recyclable plastic products, the worst of which it'll ban by 2022. Plastic utensils, those shampoo bottles you find in hotels, things like that. Thirdly, establishes a nationwide 10 cents bottle return refund program based on the success that we've seen in statewide initiatives like that. It halts construction of all new plastic producing facilities. The idea just shutting off the tap to new plastic that's being produced. And then it prevents plastic waste from being shipped to developing countries, which is really a good environmental justice aspect of this bill. Number 2, the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act, the AIM Act. And what we're talking about is hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs. And it's something that Alex Hillebrand from NRDC did a great job of breaking this down several times on calls for us. But the industrial gas used in refrigeration, air conditioning, and building insulation is a potent, extremely potent greenhouse gas. So the bill would be an 85% reduction in manufacturing and import of HFCs by 2036, as well as in the meantime, instructing the EPA to implement leak prevention and disposal requirements for products that are existing products using HFCs. And sort of this last note is something that a lot of the co-sponsors, this has strong bipartisan support. And what's frequently mentioned is the job creation potential. And that's true in a lot of these bills. And I think in a lot of climate bills is that you're giving market certainty to the industry as well as, really opening up these markets. So that's some of the job creation. Number 3, the last that we have under the materials list is the Protect America's Children from Toxic Pesticides Act. The 2 statistics I think that really just stick out that, the US uses over 1 billion pounds of pesticides annually, at nearly 1/5 of all pesticides which are used in the world. And secondly, that of those pesticides, 1/3 of the pesticides we're using in the US are pesticides that are banned in the EU. So what this does first and foremost, it bans some of the most harmful pesticides, those that cause developmental damage in children, neurological damage, lead to increased rates of Parkinson's, insecticides that lead to pollinator collapse, and then suspending pesticides that are deemed unsafe in Canada and the EU while an EPA review process goes through. Secondly, protecting frontline communities, that is, from requiring employers to report injuries related to pesticides, so we actually know the extent of the problem. And secondly, the labeling of especially harmful pesticides, ensuring that the labeling is done multilingually. And lastly, empowering local communities to take action on this, which is sort of giving communities the opportunity to petition the EPA. Essentially, it's also very much tied to climate, and the sort of larger big ag relies more on pesticides that would really would regenerative practices allow you to replace the use of pesticides as well as fertilizers. Which gets us to the next sort of slate of bills, which is the farming and forestry section. And the first being the Farm System Reform Act, targeting large concentrated animal feeding operations, CAFOs, produce an enormous amount of waste and harmful pollution. And so the sort of top line is phasing out these CAFOs by 2040. Immediately halting new construction and expansion, and then investing $100 billion over 10 years for just transition. So farmers can, to aid farmers in transition to regenerative practices. And it's, an example that Jake Davis from Family Farm Action brought up, where farmers that are basically caught, they're locked into contracts with large corporations where they're operating CAFOs on their property. Maybe they're leasing their property to the feeding operation, and they're still really just hovering around the poverty line and not able to break out of that system. So this would provide some opportunity for that. The next is the Food and Agribusiness Merger Moratorium Act. The scope of the issue: 4 beef companies produce 85% of beef in America. 4 corporations control nearly 90% of the U.S. grain market. And so, what you have is that farmers and ranchers are forced to sell into a market at lower prices. And also you have really dramatic climate impacts from this. And so, so what this would do would immediately halt corporate consolidation within the farming industry, food and beverage manufacturing, and grocery retail, while there's a commission that investigates the impact of this kind of hyper consolidation, and that is including the impact on climate, which these sort of larger corporations tend to thwart the progress on regenerative practices. Moving along here to these next 2 that really deal with farming practices. The Climate Stewardship Act is really a bill that would bolster existing programs that we have in place. And so it funds and expands existing federal programs to reduce or offset 1/3 of agriculture emissions by 2025, which is just sort of a remarkable top line. That's through programs through, for instance, the USDA, technical assistance that helps farms incorporate climate stewardship practices like cover crops, rotational grazing, other aspects to improve soil health that obviously sequesters carbon, but also water retention and helps pollinators. And additionally, grant funding for clean on-farm energy switching, helping farmers make that transition to solar and wind energy, biofuels. So that's sort of the first large point of this. The second is planting 16 billion trees. And I think what's especially remarkable is 400 million of which would be in urban areas with a focus on low-income communities and communities of color. And these are neighborhoods that often do not have the benefit of those tree canopies, which benefit the air quality in that area, as well as providing lowering the heat and temperature. You kind of get these heat zones when you don't have that tree canopy from the concrete. So both of which have an impact on public health. Restores and protects 2 million acres of essential coastal wetlands. Dual benefit of wetlands that sequester carbon, but are also really our first line of defense, in this climate crisis. It's something that hits close to home for me. I was, out of my apartment for 8 months after Hurricane Sandy. And pretty remarkably, in New Jersey, the coastal wetlands are depleted by 40%. Despite that, we're still able to prevent over $500 million in property loss. If we were to be able to increase that, it's just bolstering our defenses. And then finally, the bill invests in regional food systems. From investing in local community gardens to, in a larger scale, helping small and medium-sized farms deliver fresh, nutritious meals to local communities, which is both beneficial in terms of the food that they're delivering, but also reducing the emissions from transporting. And the last bill we have here under Farming and Forestry, the Agricultural Resilience Act. And so these are some new programs to do. There's some overlap and similar ideas here, of course. Rewarding farmers for promoting carbon sequestration and healthy soils, doing so with tax incentives and a future potential carbon market they could take advantage of. Investing in a ton of research and support for farmers who practice pasture-based livestock systems, which is obviously incredibly important in what we've been talking about with regenerative practices. And then additional grants and loans that help farms transition to green energy alternatives. And lastly, a robust focus, federal programs aimed at reducing food waste in schools, in restaurants and larger institutions, as well as creating a standardized food date labeling system to reduce confusion among consumers. Moving on here, you'll see the banners, the colors in the top are changing as we kind of change to a different section here. This is fossil fuels. We have 2 bills there. The Fracking Ban Act, Jim Walsh from Food and Water Action did just a great job of breaking this down for us. The top line that obviously it bans fracking nationwide by January 1st, 2025. Immediately halts new permits for fracking and fracking infrastructure. It revokes current permits for fracking wells within 2,500 feet of homes, schools, and other inhabited structures, which is just remarkable that we are currently fracking that close to schools, for instance. And then the last is establishing a just transition committee. Prioritizing, transferring, transitioning workers in the fossil fuel industry to good paying jobs in their communities, while also paying attention to the public health of those communities that have relied on the fossil fuel economy. The 9th, the End Polluter Welfare Act. So this is eliminating up to $150 billion in federal subsidies that go to the fossil fuel industry over 10 years. Included in that is updating what are currently under market royalty rates for oil and gas production on federal lands, recouping royalties from offshore drilling in public waters, and prohibiting taxpayer-funded fossil fuel research and development. Lastly, funding the Black Lung Disability Fund for workers that provided decades of service in providing energy to America. And then lastly is the environmental justice, just transition. So addressing disparities in environmental and public health, particularly impacting underserved communities and communities of color. It does so in several ways. First and foremost, amending the Civil Rights Act, allowing citizens and communities to seek legal remedies when policies or practices cause a disparate impact. And what that translates to is if you have policies, for instance, manufacturing that is consistently being set up in a certain community that maybe the individuals cannot prove discriminatory intent, they can still seek legal remedies and lawsuits because of the disparate fallout from this. So currently, basically, the law requires that the EPA initiate those. This would empower citizens and communities to do so. $75 million annually for research and program development to reduce public health disparities. It would require federal agencies to consider the cumulative health effects while permitting under the Clean Air and Clean Water Act. And finally, providing economic assistance for communities that depend on the fossil fuel industry and have depended on the fossil fuel industry and assuring a just transition for both those workers and local economies. Something that would be paid for in this bill by new fees on oil, gas, and coal companies. So they really should be paying for this this transition. And that is sort of the scope of the climate bills here, and hopefully, I think that we all feel like we have, you know, a great first step here that can then be built upon with future legislation. But this is the much needed first step to a better future.
Thank you, Joshua, for that in-depth review of all of the bills. Okay, so just a reminder that the next meeting is Wednesday.
Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. This is the drone programming Python course. Here we are going to learn the basics of a drone, including the components and how the drone flies.
Okay. Sorry about that. I forgot to stop it. Okay, so the next meeting is Wednesday, January 27th at noon Eastern Time. So if anyone has any questions regarding policy sector teams in the meantime, you can always email me and I'll be happy to get back to you. And I think that's it. So thank you. See you all Wednesday. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, have a good weekend, Christine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.